Hello, beautiful community. The Putin-Trump meeting in Alaska has a bad odor about it. Let's analyze it. Putin is not either giving anything up of substance or promising to give up anything of substance. He has not changed his position or reacted to Trump's ultimatum that has sort of just got withered away in the wind. The key actor at the moment is Europe. It's a failing actor, but it's the key actor, and Ukraine's fate largely depends on what Europe does. A bit about that in a moment. But first, what's the odor in the air? The odor is that you're looking at imperial decline. The United States is a constructive and unconstructive empire, and it's in decline secondary to democratic incapacity at home. Democratic incapacity at home generates politics that's weak, incoherent, and in Trump's case, because of his spectacular impulsivity, a politics that's a farce on the foreign stage. It's not even bad because it's not strategic, and it's not even bad because it's barely tactical. I wouldn't go as far as Michael Wolff goes, which is to say everything is theater. Everything is the working out of Trump's personality in the context of political action. Trump is realizing not aims, but modes of emotional self-regulation when he does policy. But I think that's 80% right. And so in that sense, the exaggeration of Michael Wolff is a constructive sort of antidote to the conventional narrative that forever tries to see Trump as one more politician playing the same set of games that other politicians play. He isn't. The trouble is that Europe is also in democratic decline. And what's happened as a result is that Europe has not been able to act sufficiently and has not been able to figure out what it even means to act sufficiently. That's to say, Europe has failed to see that it needed to set up a separate table of politics rather than trying to inflect what happens at the shifting tables of politics that Trump sets up. The policy of too many European powers is to inflect Trump's action, to react to Trump's action and mitigate its deleterious consequences. That kind of passivity is very normal in periods of historical decline, and we're seeing it now. You are trying to cling on to a sinking ship, because after all, the ship is sinking very slowly, and it'll still be the biggest ship in town. By ship, I don't mean the United States. I mean the United States as a constructively engaged global force. And the trouble is that this kind of weakness isn't just ineffectual. It doesn't actually change what Trump's doing. It doesn't create an alternative table of politics that could substantively influence the outcome of Putin's brutal invasion of Ukraine. It also gives a bad feeling to citizens in your country when you do this, when you try to inflect US policy. Because you look ineffectual, you look weak, you look defensive, you look non-proactive. And that just gives the impression that, well, that must be because institutions and the political figures in my country are hopeless, ineffectual, can't change anything, and might even be acting intentionally or inadvertently against my own interests. And that kind of weakness will increasingly start getting washed away in Europe too. Our own Trumpisms and our own Putinisms. We're going to have acceleration of this revolution of bogus strength, whereby authoritarians come along who can't do much constructively and then tell us they're stronger than the technocratic sort of centrist incapacity they're replacing. And it's not an accident that I'm grouping Trump and Putin here too, because it's a big European mistake to fail to see how much Trump and Putin are in the same camp. And here I don't mean that Trump is narcissistically attached to Putin as a source of narcissistic supply, as we discussed on the main channel. I rather mean that they're both very lamentable, one's more destructive than the other, but they're both very lamentable calamities washed up onto the shores of our politics by this global wave of revolutionary monarchism that says might is right, that says we're not just going to be neoliberals, we're going to support the competition of all against all in a way that normalizes the strong winning because they're strong. And it normalizes a kind of an account of legitimacy that says that the legitimate policy is the policy that the leader does. So, Russian propaganda says disgracefully that its war with Ukraine is a certain kind of civil war because Ukrainians are Russians in denial. But there is an important civil war narrative that isn't an adequate descriptor of that war, and that's that there is a global tension between a kind of declining pro-institutional liberal democratic centrism and a certain kind of post-truth, anti-institutional, right, ex-conservative authoritarian populism that's taken this revolutionary monarchist form. So understand that. Understand that you can't fight against Putin properly unless you fight against Trump. Trump is not the opposite of Putin. You can't even fight properly against Nigel Farage unless you understand that there are elements, very important ideological elements, whereby Putin and Farage are in the same camp. And that's not because of the resistant liberal hysteria around how Russian interference controls everything in our politics. Russian interference is real, but it actually controls fairly little, impacts fairly little. The real problem is that this is an organic global disease, which Russia happens to have caught worse than anybody else because of its special and peculiar circumstances. But it's coming home here in our countries too. Got to understand that. You don't want to build out a position where you oppose Putinism via essentially Putinist platforms in your own country. Because these are going to be platforms that will generate leaders who will anyway ally with Putinism or whatever is the latest instantiation of political unloveliness emanating out of Russia. That's the track. That's the serious track we've got to focus on, right? And there is not just a lack of, but a lack of a capacity for a serious political conversation about this. So that's bad, right? Because there's no way you can challenge a difficult bit of reality unless you understand it. Lots and lots of love.